and we will start soon. Maybe just a quick introduction of the folks who are on the call. You just heard Thomas. He is French in Japan, and I did meet in Hungary talking about a global perspective. And he was a participant in our upskilling program, so we're very happy to have Thomas again.
I'm happy to be back.
Very good, thank you. Merci bien. We're very honored to have Mercedes on the call. Mercedes is a friend and generalist who's currently based near Chicago, and we are seeing how we can use and apply and benefit from our knowledge around art in what we do with the new ABC. So we're really excited about that, and we're really happy that you are here. So very welcome, Mercedes.
Thank you.
Some of you, well, the only one who, well, you have a call with Rotana on Monday, but Rotana is my friend and partner from Paris, and so that's about it. Maybe Mukesh will join shortly, I expect, but we'll see. We'll get started anyway. We're very happy to have Oscar to be willing. We did meet Oscar a few months ago, and how this works is because Rotana is an excellent researcher, so he follows everything which is around life skills. That's where he got to find about, hey, in London there's something like a life skills lab. There's a guy doing the same as we do. So that is how we got in touch. We have had some calls. We participated even in an online event which Oscar organized. Really happy to collaborate with Oscar. And Oscar is quite, well, like we all have with life skills, we're not only allowing people to learn life skills, but obviously we're learning it ourselves and continue to learn and to grow. And Oscar has quite a remarkable story about his own experience. While at the same time, I wanted to kick off this call with a quote from a Danish philosopher called Søren Kierkegaard. And he is saying is that life is understood backwards, but it is lived forwards. And if I speak for myself, things are really becoming extremely clear in who I am, what I want to do, what my role is in the world, how I can benefit. All these things are clear. But obviously, if I look at my age, it's well, yeah. So it's. And I was like, why didn't I know this when I was 25? That would have been nice. So it's really kind of weird because now it's like, oh, everything's so totally, it's becoming so clear. So now there are two things in mind. One is like, why didn't I know it then? And the other thing is like, oh, maybe I'm set up now for something completely different because this is getting very clear now. So in any way, a long introduction to give the floor to Oscar to share his story and where he's coming from and where he is now, because we're on a journey. It's never a finite thing. So Oscar, why don't you get started? I'm really anxious to hear about your experience.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks, Arnold. Well, hello to everyone, and thank you all for coming and being part of this webinar, especially those of you who are here at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, so I'm really here to share a bit about my discoveries in my life and what it is that I'm wanting to bring to other people now that I've sort of got clarity on that as well myself. And really I start with, I think, where a lot of people start, with the idea that when we grow up, we get a responsible job, we earn a decent living, and we continue that way till the end of our lives, and somehow that will be fulfilling to us. So we aim for our material benefits and comfort, which is a completely natural and normal thing to do. But a lot of focus is lost in terms of what it is that's really important to us. So as children, we have almost boundless energy with regards to what we do and why we want to do it and what we want. And as we get older, we become more focused upon what it is we should do in order to be responsible or to fit in with the society that we're living in. And we lose some of the passion and excitement for ourselves because we lose touch with what it is that's really important to us. And as I've gotten older and had the experience of working through that, so I got a job that paid well and allowed me to pay my bills and did all the things, ticked all the boxes that I was supposed to tick, and I did that really well and was proud of what I was doing in terms of providing a good service to people. But the thing that I wanted to do for myself, or the meaning that I wanted in my life, wasn't being fulfilled by that job. So I kept finding that I was becoming less and less excited about the things that I was doing in my life. And I wasn't really sure why, because I was very much doing the things that I should be doing according to what I was told when I was younger. And then I came across some teachers and some material which was really about how do we find meaning for ourselves, and then use that meaning to start taking action in the world, which I think is an incredibly important thing for us to do, especially in a time where we're moving into a new way of working and being with each other, with the internet maturing and technology starting to really take its place in the world and start to do things that we were sort of only dreaming would happen in science fiction. The opportunity for us now is to ask, well, what world do we really want to live in, and how can I contribute to make that happen? And that requires us to really look at what is going on in the world and ask ourselves, what meaning is this? What meaning does this have for us? And what is it that what is it that's important to me that I want to take action on now to make a difference or to change the way in which we work together? And that really requires us to do a couple of things which we may be uncomfortable with initially, which is to look at things that we're uncomfortable with, to start to address things that may not seem okay with us right now, in order for us to really get real about what it is that's happening, and then to make a choice based on what meaning we have for ourselves about how we move forward. So yeah, that's really what I'm aiming to teach people at the moment, with the courses that I run, to really find what meaningfulness and what purpose we have, which will lead us into action to find new possibilities. There's a lot of what we do in modern life is to make choices out of fear, what it is we want to avoid. And so I'm really looking to help people understand that mechanism for themselves, so that they can start to make choices out of possibility and creativity and what it is that they're wanting to see in the world, rather than trying to avoid the things that they don't want. So that's me.
Okay.
So what made you look like, you said, when I was not feeling that I was doing anything meaningful, although you were doing the things that you were supposed to do. And which is a you thing, and I can rant about that for hours. But it's really, I think the moment you realize that, it's a huge realization. It's
Absolutely.
a huge realization where you say, hey, I'm kind of complying with my environment, but it doesn't make me happy.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate on that? How did that happen?
Well, I think the ways in which I was coping with that unhappiness started to have a negative effect on me. So, I mean, basically, I was working in a good job and enjoying the benefits of that, the financial benefits of that, but unhappy with what I was doing. And so the consequence of that was really that I started to get involved in substance abuse and other things to help myself cope with the fact that I wasn't happy with what I was doing. And I got to a point where that behavior started to have a negative impact on my life, and I wasn't able to ignore that was happening anymore. And I think it's a really important point to start to that moment you're talking about, where we realize that what we're doing is not meaningful to us, but we've been trying to fulfill something that other people have put onto us, or society has put onto us. And I think it's a key point in maturity, stepping from childhood into adulthood psychologically. I mean, there's many different variations of that for everyone in their lives. Everyone can find that point where they suddenly go, this is where I was working to do something, and then I suddenly realized that wasn't what I wanted. So it's a very important step, if you like, into maturity.
But in your opinion and in your work, Oscar, does every person come to this point, or do some people never come to that point?
Well, in my work in particular, it's about helping people to get to that point. So I think there's less and less opportunity in terms of social support for us to get there. So if we look back into time, before we got into a large internet-based busy society, we had a practice of reflection and a practice of intergenerational knowledge sharing. So we had elders who would pass on knowledge to younger people and support them through into that maturity. And now we don't really support young people into those practices anymore. So there's a potential for people to be eternal children, much more than there were. I would say in the past. Though I'm not an expert on. I'll just put that out there. I'm not an expert on the world. I'm just just know what I've come across myself in my practice. So yes is the short answer for that.
On another note, you were saying, Oscar, that you were kind of forced, or you decided to look at the things you were uncomfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
How did that work out? Because most people try to escape from that.
Absolutely.
and try to avoid it, or pretend it's not there. I think maybe even much stronger.
Yeah.
How did you bring up the courage? Because it takes courage to look at the things where you're not happy with in your own life.
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky in the sense that I've come across teachers and communities of people who have made this kind of practice their behavior, this kind of work their practice. So I've been lucky in the sense that I've always looked for teachers who can offer that kind of knowledge. Okay. And the teachers and communities that I've come across, like the course that I'm licensed to teach is from a charity that teaches experiential and transformational courses. They have communities of volunteers around them who practice those practices all the time, so there's that regular support in place. And so I've been lucky enough to come across those groups of people and those practices in my life, and really get to understand that uncomfortableness is just a feeling when we're moving in change from one period of where we're comfortable to something that we don't know. And once we face the uncomfortableness, we've realized that it's not as terrible as we imagine it to be. And my favorite sort of way of describing this is There's a Chinese expression which basically says, when you face the tiger disappears. So the idea that if you're looking away from the thing that you're afraid of, it's like a tiger, fierce and roaring at you. But when you face into it, it disappears, because then you see what's actually there.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I forget his name, but I recently listened to a podcast of a famous movie actor and music producer, and he always teaches his children when they're fearful of something, then he asks them, what is on the other side of fear?
Mm.
And his answer is, there's nothing.
Yeah.
That's exactly this Chinese phrase what you're saying. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is the fear itself is just our own mental or emotional projections on what we don't want. It's an information for us about what we're not wanting for ourselves, what we're wanting to avoid. But yeah, on the other side of that, it's not necessarily the thing we're afraid of. So it's again being able to support ourselves to be real about what it is that's going on. What is it that we're imagining is going to happen, and what is it that's actually going to happen? What do we really know? Which can be really supportive in making those changes from one behavior to another. And we have lots of examples of that on a societal context as well. What would happen if we all, if women stopped shaving their legs, or if we stopped using money, or all of those kind of big fears. What would happen if the the banking system collapsed? In essence, we don't really know what will happen when those things change, but there are great narratives to support that behavior to continue on a larger scale, and stops us from really starting to examine what could we possibly do to change the way that we work together in order to create something that benefits us.
Well, that is another major shift. You talked about looking in areas where you're uncomfortable versus staying in your comfort zone. But the other thing what you do is, I think it's also a major shift, is like no longer looking at what I don't want, but start defining what you do want. And that is a huge shift as well, and that is very, very challenging for many people. Yeah. Because we know very well, if I look from my own coaching practice, if you ask any person what is it that you don't want, everybody starts rambling on for 10, 20, 30 points, and it's easy. But if you say, yeah, but what do you want? That's something else. How are you encouraging or helping people in that process? Or what is your own experience? Because you came from that, like you was uncomfortable with certain things, but it's a huge shift to say, yeah, but this is what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a very clear tools that we use, like linguistic tools that people can then use and use in their lives. So it's not about it's not a secret kind of practice in any way. And it takes a lot of effort, to be honest. We are continually, I think, encouraged to look at the things that we don't want. And I've been reading a book just recently called The Winning of the Story Wars, which is all about the way that the marketing industry has used inadequacy in order to sell us products. And the effect that has on our behavior is in research shown to be significant. So in a way, we've been educated through advertising and that kind of inadequacy focus to look at the things that we don't want, to look at ourselves and look at the things that we don't want as well. So it's a real discipline to be able to say, okay, well that's me looking at what I don't want. Now I'm going to look at what I do want. And what I've discovered is that in what's required in looking for what we want is a period in which we step away from what we're doing in order to reflect on what it is that what's really going on for us, and get in touch with what's really important to us. And that, again, is at the moment, is quite a difficult thing to do, because we're being educated into this behavior of continually being busy, continually doing more and more and more. And what I'm starting to realize is that in order for us to break the cycle of doing things over and over again that we don't want, or focusing on the things that we don't want, we really need to understand how we can stop what we're doing and reflect on what is going on so that we can get in touch with what's really important to us and what steps we want to take next. And that, at the moment, feels a little bit, for me anyway, feels a little bit counterintuitive, because I'm very comfortable with this idea of just continually doing stuff. And in a way, that sort of continually doing stuff is becoming a way of creating what I call false self-esteem, because I have this narrative for myself where I'm doing things, I'm being productive, I'm being of use, even when I'm not actually examining whether or not things I'm doing are of worth or have any meaning for me. So yeah, it requires a lot at the moment. And I think it's just the more we can educate each other and learn to take it on a practice of reflection and really digging into why something is important to me. I choose to do this because it means something to me over and over again. Then we can start to move away from this inadequacy focus, this I don't want this, because we don't create what we want in that space. When we're doing things because we have to, or something terrible will happen, what we actually do is run away from the very thing we want to create, because we're trying to avoid that all the time.
What do you mean by we're trying to avoid that?
Well, if you
can you give some examples how that works?
Sure. Well, if you're saying I have to get a job or else I'm going to be homeless, and so I have to do all of these, I have to go and do loads of interviews, I have to apply to jobs all the time, I have to be, making sure I'm perfect, I have to make sure that I get it right, I have to have all the best qualifications, all of those sort of things. What we generate within ourselves is stress and uncomfortableness, and we also start to erode our self-esteem when we hold that narrative for ourselves. And initially, the fear that it causes might whip us very quickly into action, into doing lots of things. But what we generate within ourselves is a lot of negative energy and negative emotions and negative thoughts about ourselves. And then, as a result of that, we start to get overwhelmed or just try to avoid the situation. So it builds, it quite often builds in us behaviors like procrastination, because we don't want to, as human beings, we don't really enjoy getting into things that are uncomfortable, that make us feel uncomfortable and stressed out. So we would avoid then having anything to do with the thing that we're actually trying to create, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But so you say that we're what I call the treadmill of doing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
but we need to move in a state of being.
Yeah.
But how can I get out of that? Because the notion of a treadmill is the only choice I have. I have to go faster, because if I stop, I drop out. If I go slower, it's hard. So I only can go faster, and so it's kind of counterintuitive.
Absolutely.
So how can we help people? How can we trigger people to do that? If I speak about myself, I use the analogies like I was running in a treadmill very, very fast, and everybody in my surrounding was doing the same. So I had no idea I was stupid. So, and then somebody put a stick inside of the treadmill, and I dropped out, and that's when I realized, like, oh, I was running like crazy in a treadmill, yeah. But yeah, so I totally admit it was not my own choice. Well, kind of. So it's like how can we help people to move from that state of doing into a state of being? Well, everything around us seems to be just like run harder, faster, more, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really difficult thing to. There's no magic pill for that, basically, and I think that's really the most honest answer I can give you. But there are things that we can do. We can build in a practice of time for ourselves and understanding the mechanisms that take us into the treadmill. So on a physiological level, we're talking about the stress response. So we have a fight, flight, or fold response, which was built into us to help us survive when we were being attacked by other animals or in situations where things are life-threatening, which is it's very useful in those situations. It's a much needed response within us. But in the modern world, what happens is we have situations which are not life-threatening, which trigger that response. And so I've been lucky enough to come across teachers who deal with things like embodiment, where they talk about using, so they go from the body in or the body out, if you like. So they talk about the stress response, and if you, Paul Linden, who is one of the people I've been lucky enough to do classes with, he talks about the stress response as everything in the center line of your body tightens and lifts. So if you can relax your eyebrows, your tongue, your chest, your gut, and let everything sink, that can help you to manage that response, and then you can start to slow down. So that's one way of doing it. And then with the courses I teach at the moment from the More to Life charity, they have sort of linguistic tools that you can use. So we use the words I have to or else. So I have to do something or else this will happen. And we can map out what our mental story is, our mental narrative is around that situation, and get it out of our heads onto a piece of paper so we can see it, and then make a decision about what it is that we're really saying to ourselves and whether or not that stuff is really real. Again, we're going back into what's true and what's not. So once we've done that, we can start to make a choice about what it is that we do next. So the key thing is it requires us to notice that we're on the treadmill, or notice that we're doing lots of stuff, and then step away from the treadmill and have a moment to reflect on what it is that's actually going on. And so those are tools that can help us to do that. And as we build our practice in more and more, we become more adept at noticing that that's happening. So again, what we've had is so far is a lifetime of learning how to be on the treadmill. And now we are learning how to step off the treadmill and start to make choices out of being, as you got out.
Absolutely, but at the same time, I had to think about some examples of two friends of mine who, when they were in a divorce or one was in a divorce and the other one lost, and I visited them. Mm-hmm. These guys, and I was in their living room. These guys, they put on the radio from the moment they get out of bed, from the moment they get to sleep, just to not be confronted with that inner voice. Mm. Yeah, so a lot of people do a lot of trouble to avoid that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of support around that as well. You know, we have a lot of things which are supporting us to not stop and take a listen to our inner voice. And also, I think because we have a culture where we don't really talk about the inner voice a lot, you know, there's just in terms of, if you look on a sort of a more extreme context or a wider context, if we look at how our discussions around mental health are, which are very kind of closed and shrouded in mystery, and maybe we won't talk about that in public and that sort of thing. The less we talk about that in an open way, the less likely it is that we can start to say to ourselves, look, I'm just having this day where my mind is making up lots of stories and it's creating some discomfort in me, which is really what's happening, as opposed to, oh my God, there must be something wrong with me. I think the idea that our thoughts and emotions are actually us, in a way, has got very closely fused to our identities, when actually we can, in the practices that I've learned about, we can step back away from thoughts and emotions and be more observant of them, to see their effect on us, and that helps us to be less judgmental about ourselves and afraid of what it means about us. And we don't have that kind of dialogue yet in the world on a large scale, and I think that's a big part of what I'm aiming for with people that I come into contact with, is to help them to understand that just because you have a thought that you're uncomfortable with doesn't mean you have to do anything with that thought, or that it means that there's something intrinsically wrong with you. It's just a thought that you've had because your mind is having lots of thoughts all the time, and you can choose to do something with it, or you can choose to not do something with it. So yeah.
Okay. Well, all very wise words. Thank you very much, Oscar.
It's okay.
And I think it's a good time to... Sorry?
I was just going to say, and it sounds easy when I say it, and I can also assure you that the practice of it is not easy.
Absolutely, it requires effort and determination and working, but it's like with anything. Yeah? If you want to learn how to... Well, Mercedes will hopefully elaborate on that on another time. You want to learn how to paint, how to play the piano, whatever. It takes effort and practice and continuing. Well, you guys know I'm into sports, and it doesn't matter what kind of sport. It's not something which you say, well, I've done it twice and I'm not good at it, I stop with it. Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
People think in those areas is perfectly normal, but when we talk about the most important thing is about their own transformation, then they think, well, just 5 or 10 minutes, you should do the trick. Yes, but it's that consumer mentality which has kind of spoiled us, I think, and thinks that everything should be quick and fast, and it's like taking a pill or taking a drug or taking some alcohol, and then we see very fast some results, whereas if I want to change certain habits and behaviors, well, it's not going to happen in that speed as we're used to from a consumer point of view.
Exactly. And also why having the support of other people who also practice is important, because as a group you can help yourselves to keep going when you have those moments of, oh, I've had enough of this. But yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there, because often, we, as you say, we have this sort of dialogue or this sort of story which is about, oh, we can just fix it like that, we'll just take a pill and it'll happen. But this is, again, which is I think why we've connected so well, is this is lifelong learning. This is about us learning continually through our lives, and the bonus, or the the side effect of this is really a meaningful life, something that offers us the richness and depth and diversity that we would not normally have access to if we just thought that we could get it with a pill. So that's, just wanted to put that there.
I think it's a good moment to open up the floor for any questions. So if you have a question, please unmute yourself and go ahead with your question.
Hi, Oscar.
Hi, Mukesh.
Thank you for your enlightening talk. And it's not a question, but it's more over a clarification. So, at the heart of the discussion which we are having here is implanting a new story, a new narratives, right? So, moving away from fear-based narratives. Mm-hmm. Going to life supporting narratives which is coming from the being, just being as a human. Mm-hmm. So however, intellectually easy to understand, even not understand, easy for many people. Practice is difficult because as Arnold said, that we are on a treadmill, so that's serving us monetarily, emotionally, and looking for alternatives is sometimes scary. Mm-hmm. So creating the new storage while you are still on the treadmill because it's serving you is somewhat difficult for many people, and that's what you're teaching, right? So
yeah, there is another part of that, which is also being real about what's happening. So it's not that what I'm not teaching is, oh, we're just going to be positive about our lives and not focus on anything that's negative. It's actually really about what is really happening in this situation, and what is it that I would like to, from this situation, what creative response can I have to this situation out of what is important to me moving forward. So it's not that, I'm definitely not saying that we can wake up tomorrow and we can have the perfect life that we want. What I'm saying is that we have the opportunity in our lives, based on whatever challenges that we face, to make a choice to do something which connects with a deeper meaning for us, which will provide a different quality of experience in that particular situation. So the best example I can give of this is one of the guys who created this work that I teach was a student of a guy called Viktor Frankl, who is a psychologist who developed logotherapy, which is all about man's search for meaning and man's ability to put meaning into things in order to motivate him to do stuff. And he was a survivor from a concentration camp at Auschwitz, and what he noticed was that people in the camp who could create and find meaning in their lives, in their existence there, would continue to flourish, or not necessarily, but continue to live, and even at times find joyfulness in their situation. And then others who had lost their meaning for life, meaning for being there, would would quickly lose their life, would die, and that it got to a point where other prisoners could identify when somebody was going to die based on how they were being with each other and their own connection with meaning for staying alive. So what we're really looking at is, how do we take the mechanism of building meaning in our lives that is within us and use that to start to deliberately create the kind of experience that we're looking for in our lives. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Just wanted to ask, what has been your experience so far teaching this life skills?
Well, my experience so far has been amazing. It's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done, actually. I've had a lot of experience of not being in meaningfulness, and really learning that I can create meaning that makes my life worth living, which is something which I didn't think was possible. Has been really amazing, and that hasn't made my life perfect. I haven't suddenly become incredibly rich and famous and powerful or whatever, but what I am doing is waking up every day realizing that what I'm doing has touched something deep in me that is connected to my reason for being alive, and that's really the most rewarding thing I can ask of myself. And it's helped me to start to ask questions like, how much is enough? How do I live with enough for myself without taking from other people unnecessarily? How can I step away from the treadmill and start to really continue to get in contact with what's important to me? How can I reach out and connect with other people and build partnerships that will support more growth? So those kind of questions naturally start to arise from my connection with my meaningfulness, rather than the things that I don't want to happen. And often when I get into that space, I'm just like, well, they should be doing it differently. I can't, I'm really mad about this. But I don't have any answers to that. I just have a lot of anger and resentment and accusations. So, and that's not actually a very comfortable place to live. I don't really enjoy that space at all. But over here, I have creativity and possibility and a stability that allows me to keep asking what next, even when the situation I'm in is not what I want or is difficult. So, yeah, that's my experience of it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I wanted to comment, Oscar, that talking about life skills and the process of how we live today in society, one of the things that we seem to avoid is actually feeling bad, feeling challenged, feeling incapable. And we have in education kind of a rush of that everything has to be fun, everything has to be positive, and everything has to be easy. And in my experience, we are losing the greatest gift of life when we avoid the gift of being sad, of not knowing what to do, of not knowing who we are. One of the things that I find harder when you deal with the people in the treadmill, when you deal with people in general, is that today we have lost the ability to leave the mystery. To be in mystery, to leave the questions, and try to not figure out what's going to happen. The famous creative plateau, which is it's freaking, nobody wants to be there. But the idea is that when you are there, miracles can happen. So how do you, in your lab, how do you, if you address the idea that living in the nothingness is as creative as trying to be in the treadmill, how do you address it, and what experience you have about that?
Okay. Wow, that's a big question. So, yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is exactly the sort of space that I'm inviting people into with this work. So the treadmill itself is not a space of creativity. It's a space of one solution, and I must do everything I can to get to that solution, because that will fix my problems. And what you're talking about is the acknowledgement, acknowledging where you are, what you're feeling, and then potentially waiting for the creative solution that it is that you're wanting in order to decide what your next step is. And I think really the invitation to people is to understand that your emotions and your thoughts are information. They're not things that can affect you in a way that that you don't allow them to. So we have a lot of avoidance strategies around feeling bad, because we're sort of given this sort of story by society about being positive, and if you're just smiley and happy, then everything will be okay. But what it robs us of is another layer of experience that's available to us, and that experience is information. We have a non-verbal part of ourselves which is taking in lots of information, and then the challenge of that non-verbal part of us is how does it communicate what it has learned to us, or what that part of us has learned, and it does that through emotion and feeling. And so a lot of what I teach is helping people to start to be comfortable with acknowledging and understanding what they're feeling, and then to allow themselves that quiet moment, that moment of not knowing, in order to have that information come up for them so that they can make choices around that. So it really is about helping people to learn more about their experience of life in all of its capacity, rather than just its thinking, or all of our capacity rather than just our thinking, so that we can make better choices for ourselves based on that. And really my experience has been this living in a purely mental space, trying to think my way through life, and being on the treadmill of trying to make things happen because that's what's supposed to that's the solution that I should be reaching for. Burning myself out, becoming depressed, becoming incredibly unhappy with myself and my life, and you know, not knowing what the solution to that is, and in a way that not knowing is a gift, because at that point, when I go, I don't know what I can do about this, I start to become open to possibility. I start going, well, okay, what is going on around here? What could I do? What is available to me? So it's outside of that experience. So outside of the treadmill, what I've really started to experience is that I still have uncomfortableness. I still have those moments of not knowing, but I treasure those moments. I've learnt that they are giving me information about my experience and what I want, which are giving me more information about how I want to move forward, rather than just thinking I have a solution and that I just have to keep going towards that solution and it will suddenly fix everything. Because that takes away the journey. You know, there's only where I am now and where I want to be, and everything in between is just the inconvenience that I have to get through in order to get here. Whereas in my experience of all things, allowing myself to have that richness of discomfort and comfort, and yes, I want this, and no, I don't want that, and everything is going on around me, I get to experience and be grateful for everything that comes in between that, and it's no longer just about making that one thing happen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. I think it's a really important thing. You know, we've become very discomfort averse in this society, and the discomfort. I don't know if you've heard of someone called Pema Chodron. She's a Buddhist nun.
Oh yeah,
and I love her work. I mean, she's beautiful with her description. The places that scare you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when she talks about grounded groundlessness, I mean, that's exactly the quality of life that I think is a gift to people, to have that ability to sit in, I don't know, and I'm not perfect, and I'm willing to be vulnerable here, and also I know from that space something creative and my next step will come from that. So I think she's an incredible writer, has some great thoughts on that.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, we have come to the end of our call, and as it is Saturday morning, Friday night, Saturday morning for some people, I want to be mindful of that. So I would like to thank Oscar for sharing very deeply your thoughts, your experiences, and also your advice to us. And I want to thank each of the participants for being there. We love that you're there, and it's just like Oscar said, it's together even though we're globally dispersed, we're really a community about learning and growing together, and that's extremely important. So thank you for sharing that, Oscar, because that's totally what we see. If you learn and grow together and can be vulnerable together, is extremely powerful. So we thank you for sharing your part of your journey. So really, really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to seeing you guys on our next call on March the 7th with Jorge Barba about, already Rotana revealed the secret, because the topic is what's next after the smartphones. Yeah. but yeah, so it's more looking into the future, but also what does it mean to me, and will be a very thoughtful discussion as well. So thank you very much, and have a beautiful weekend, and enjoy the journey.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.